So this video is primarily going to be a little bit of cleanup and tightening up the current control and the current coding. So we might add one or two new things at the end of the video because I do want to keep moving the tutorial forward. But this is really about looking at some of the gaps in the control and tightening everything up so as that you, if nothing else, you protect the player from themselves. That right now, as we've said, that if you hit a move button while you're in mid-jump, then you will jump again. And clearly that just breaks the game. So that's the first thing that we're going to fix. Now, what we're going to do, we're going to create a variable in the moveQ script because this is what's attached to our QBert object. So this variable is going to use to track whether or not you are jumping. And the way we're going to determine you're jumping is a jump is going to be considered when you press one of the move buttons, and it ends when you collide with a tile. So, public string, we're just going to store our letters Y and N for yes and no. So public string, and it's going to be mid-jump or whatever you want to call it. And it's going to default to no. So you at the beginning of the game, you are not in mid-jump. And now we're just going to check to see if you are in mid-jump. So you have to add another parenthesis here. Whoops, no asterisk, I'm so sorry. Just the parenthesis. Because the entire set of conditions within the if statement have to be in parentheses. And each individual condition has to be in its own set of parentheses. And yes, it's supposed to be a double ampersand like that. And mid-jump equals N. And then a parenthesis at the end. And if you're using Visual Studio, when you have a parenthesis selected, it'll show you the matching one. So this shows me that the last parenthesis here matches the first parenthesis. So I should have the right amount of parentheses, but you can just keep moving inward. So like I said, each condition should be within its own set of parentheses. So you click on the next parenthesis, and you see it matches with this one, so on and so forth. So let's go ahead and just add this to all of them because, again, even though I like to run the code after each change, it's the same type of change. So I think we should be safe. Just remember to add that parenthesis at the beginning. So again, the logic that we've introduced is if this variable, that not just pressing the key down, you have to press the key down, and this variable has to be set to N in order to execute the jump. So right now there is nothing setting it to N, so setting it to Y, excuse me. So we are checking for this, but this condition doesn't change. This value doesn't change, so we need to make it change. So mid-jump, oops, there we go. And only one equal sign when you're setting it to a value. I think that's why you have to do two equal signs, is Unity thinks that you're trying to set the value when in fact you're trying to check the value. So if you're not jumping and this makes you jump, you should therefore be tracking that you're jumping. So now I'll just copy and paste that. For newcomers, like I said, the trickiest thing is probably getting the parentheses right. So again, each individual check has to be in its own set of parentheses. The entire if statement has to be a set of parentheses. And input is a little bit even more confusing because the key you're checking is also within a set of parentheses. So now the only thing that's missing here is we set this variable to the value Y, but we don't ever set it back. So what we're going to do, we are going to check for a collision with the tile. At first, it's just going to check for a collision. We can later add a, right now tiles don't have a tag, so we can create a tag called tile, attach it to the tiles, and then if we really need to check whether or not a tile has been landed on, we can do that. But just about anything else you land on will already have code to handle, so it probably won't be necessary. But I do want to throw it out there just in case. Like I said, this entire video is about having tighter coding and control over what's going on. So outside of the update section, what we're going to do, we're going to do on collider and on collision enter. And again, we're going to replace this with the word other. And let's try that again. And now what we're going to do, we're now going to set the value back to n. So Midjump is equal to now. So, makes sense, but here's the problem. Right now, the character has wobble. So there's a couple ways we can handle this, because I've already tested, and that if you're really laying on that key, you can still glitch it, because when he wobbles, he's landed, but he still needs that briefest of moment to not wobble. So we either have to fix the wobble, or we can just put a little code in place that gives a little bit of delay. That way, even though he wobbles, this still is not active yet. This is still saying that they're jumping. So what we're going to do is, rather than putting this here, we're going to go back to our good old friend IEnumerator. And it's going to be delay move parentheses. Again, don't let the underline mess you up. It really shouldn't do that, because it's just telling you that there's nothing in here. Yield, return, new, wait 4 seconds, and you can do a decimal. Let's do just like, let's try a 1/10 of a second. And since it's a decimal, you need to put the letter F there. This is a float. And then we'll take this, cut, paste. Whoops, I actually didn't hit copy, and so I copied a blank. So that's just Midjump equals n. So yes, I could have done this originally, but I kind of wanted to walk through the logic of why I was doing this. And now this, when the collision occurs, will instead refer to this. So start coroutine, and it's delay move, also with parentheses. That should do it. We'll see if that's enough. The problem with taking this approach is it creates a sense of lag, that, hey, I hit the button and nothing happened. So that's the only thing that we have to be careful of. This is kind of a Band-Aid. Fixing the wobble is a better solution. So we can certainly look at that in another video, but first and foremost, we need to lock down player control. So if I haven't forgotten anything, this should now take care of that. So it will definitely take care of, if you rapid click on jump buttons when you're mid-jump, that is definitely taken care of. The second part, the delay, is again to try to prevent him falling over because he wobbles a little bit. So rapid fire hitting A is not a problem, or any of the keys. I just hit it a bunch of times, was not a problem. Do it again. Not a problem. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep rapid firing even when he's landing to see if that 1/10 of a second delay is enough. Looks like that 1/10 of a second delay was quite enough. Because like I said, I was testing this before, and I was pretty consistently knocking the little fella over. So the question is, how snappy will the control feel, and do you really need... Oh, that was interesting. Oh, I know why that didn't get changed. Sorry. As an aside, I'm pointing with my finger. I'm so sorry. Let's try with using the mouse. The reason why this didn't change is because Nerd landed on it and he increased the number by 1, and we already said that there's no cap, so that's one of the other things we're going to fix in this. But, so, mission accomplished for this first part. Rapid firing no longer creates a problem, and it's adjusted for that little bit of wobble. So again, couple things, we can try to find out what the cause of the wobble is. It might be just the size of the collider box. Maybe its base needs to be a little bit wider. So don't make it any taller, but make the base wider. Maybe that will help. But anyways, so what we're going to do, we're now going to, one more thought. So this might be a little bit excessive. 0.05 might do it. So you're going to have to do a little testing, because, I mean, I was really laying on that key to see if I could make him fall over, and it didn't. So it's possible you could make this even less, because it's basically how long does he wobble. And it's the briefest, you can barely even see it. So this actually might be a satisfactory solution, dropping it down to 0.05, whatever. But anyways, the main issue with player control has now been resolved. You can no longer double, triple, quadruple jump and break the game. You can now only jump once you've landed. Okay, so that was the first thing. The next thing is what we just observed, and that is we need to control the value for the tiles, and that's pretty easy. So right now we have constants. We'll keep using constants. We'll eventually change these to variables. So what we're going to do is, so this is looking for a collision with QBert. If QBert collides with it, then this gets decreased. So what we want to do, we don't want this number to go beyond 0. We don't want to go below 0. So what we'll do is we're going to actually put an adjustment here. The reason for it is if we increase this back to 0, then this executes and we'll mess this up because it'll keep minusing out 1. So we don't want this to keep executing. So in other words, what happens is this should only happen once. If he jumps in on again, it'll get set to -1. This won't execute, but then we adjust it back to 0. So if color status equals, actually, let's just do less. If it's less than 0, then color stat, try that again. Color status equals 0. So again, sequence matters. We're adjusting the number back to 0. That way this doesn't get executed. So it's okay for it to briefly dip below 0. We just need to adjust it back to 0. And similarly for this, what we're going to do for nerd, it's also going to be within the tag check. If that has been increased, what we're going to do is if status is greater than 1, then we bring it back down to 1. And that alone should actually fix the remaining tile issues if I've thought this out correctly. Okay, so let's run it. Actually, let's see how much of a delay we have for nerd. Actually not, we want game flow. So let's bump that up to like 15 seconds, and we'll bump this up a little bit more so it doesn't land on my head. So that gives me a couple more seconds to hop around, because I want to be able to repeatedly jump on Yep, so they're changing. Now, he's landed on this one and this one. So if the code works, I should now be able to hop on these and they will change. So we're going to go up one and then down one. And it did change. So just like that, we fixed the issue with the tiles because I repeatedly jumped on the tiles and yet he was still able to change it. And the tiles that he landed on that I had yet to change, I was able to change. So I know that it's not going outside of the range that it's supposed to. So the third thing that needs to be done is we need Nerd to rotate properly based on the direction that he's heading. So to do that, what we need to do, we need to go to Nerd. So when he moves, he needs to rotate in the corresponding direction. So we just want to grab the corresponding lines from QBert. So when it's 0, 4, -1, 0, 4, -1, it's this. Yes, I could have thought it out, but why reinvent the wheel? We already have the coding there, so. And then when it is 140, 140, it's this. And now, since I'm testing him, as opposed to testing Nerd instead of testing the tiles, we actually want him to spawn a little bit quicker so we don't have to wait. So game flow, and we'll drop this down to like 4 seconds. Yep, he's facing the right direction. So just like that, it was fixed. So now that we've done that cleanup, I think what we'll just do is we will add a giant collider box under the board, and that way it will catch any object that goes off the board and then destroy it, because unless you destroy an object, it's still taking up memory. So what we're going to do, and there's actually a few ways to do this. You could check the vertical position, and if it goes beyond a vertical position, you could delete it. Really doesn't matter in a game this simple. So let's do game object, create empty, and we are going to add a component. We're going to do physics, and we're going to do a box collider. And this one needs to be, let's see, like 15 by 15. And let's actually rotate from above so we can position this correctly. I believe that should be plenty. I can't see how he could possibly hop beyond that. Yeah. Probably a little bit bigger than it absolutely is necessary, but that's fine. Just move it up a little bit. Collider boxes can do some weird things when objects are moving really fast that the collision isn't detected. So I want this to be fairly close to him jumping off the bottom. So what we'll do is we'll give this, let's call this safety net. And let's give it a tag. So add tag. We'll call it net. Go back. Net. And now what we'll do for Q, now we have an on collision enter. But what we're going to do to differentiate them, the safety net will be set as a trigger. So this won't work for a collision, for a trigger. It only works for an object that's not a trigger. So what we do is we do on trigger. Let's try that again. On trigger. Why is this not doing on trigger? Don't know. So on trigger enter. And what we'll do here, we will say if, so again, we're just going to check the tag, if other dot, and here you don't have to do game object, you can just do tag. I'm not sure why the difference, why collision requires you to check, to declare a game object, and this you can just say tag. So if other dot tag equals net, then we want Q to be moved back to the top. You're also going to subtract lives, but I'd rather have the live system be its own thing, but this is starting to brush up against it. So get component, transform. Oh, sorry. Not parenthesis. Losing my mind. Transform dot position equals, again, 3 coordinates, 3 vectors. And I believe we said it's 0, 0, 0 for the top tile, but we want them to appear above the top tile. So we will do let's do +1, 0. Now, since objects do drop onto the top tile, that could potentially create a collision up there. So we might want to do something like, well, could make him like invincible for a brief moment. So even if he collides with something, it doesn't damage him at first. But there's other ways. There's certainly ways we can handle the his spawning at the top. So this should move him to that. He'll, I believe, keeps his velocity. We can fix that if necessary, but let's see what happens. Actually, let's just fix the velocity to begin with. So get component, and its rigid body, and its velocity equals new vector, zero, 0, 0. However, even though we're setting the velocity to 0, 0, 0, because it's in mid-air, gravity will take it, and that's what we want. So we want to offset any kind of diagonal that's going on, and then gravity will take over. So that should take care of it. And actually, I can jump off just about any. I could really jump off any tile, and this would work. But we'll just, let's just jump right off the top here. So there we go. Jump off this one. Almost want it to be a little bit lower because we'll eventually fix that. Obviously, that's because we haven't done any enemy control yet. So let's jump off the front since we've jumped off the back in a few places. Yeah, I think it happens a little bit too soon. I was concerned about him falling really fast and messing things up, but I think he falls a little bit too soon because you can still see him. You kind of want him to disappear off the screen. Okay. So yeah, there's a couple things we can do. We can lower the collider box a little bit. Maybe we could put like a fog under here. That way they drop through that. So I think that should do it for this video. That's quite a bit that we got done in a very short period of time. So we've imposed some very important controls. So we've tightened up movement. We have fixed the rotation for nerd. We now have the ability to detect if QBert has jumped off of the board. We can use that in a later video also to detect if an enemy has jumped off the board as well. Basically, it's just applying what we did to QBert to the other objects. So, yeah, I think that should do it. So in the next video, we'll get back into adding some more new features. Maybe we will finally add the snake. There's also, as I mentioned, the green blob, which freezes everything. And then after that point, it's pretty much just creating a title screen, doing score, tracking lives, and a lot of that is very easy and probably can be done in a single video. So we're already getting kind of close to the end here. A few more things in addition to what I just mentioned, and that is increasing the difficulty. So the hopping on tile multiple times to change it multiple times, but honestly, the coding is already there. We're already using an integer, which we add and subtract based on a character landing on it. So it's just a matter of increasing what the max number is that can go up to, and as well as adding the additional colors, because right now we have green and white. So clearly, if it needs to be hopped on a second time and changed to another color, we just have to put in a statement in for that. So yeah, we're looking at maybe 2-3 more videos. And again, if there's any features that I'm forgetting about that you would like to see, just let me know by leaving a comment. And again, I hope you found this helpful, and I hope you have a good day.